to get started, we took a very hard look at player evaluation. Okay, we took a very, very hard look at player evaluation to get started. So we evaluate our players from December to November of any calendar year, right? So all the way from, the beginning of one off season, which for us starts in December, and it goes all the way throughout the end of the previous season. Now, it's important to note that the most important time for us is between June and August. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit about why that is in the second video here, but really what you should know is that between June and August, those are 8 weeks when really we'll have our kids the most in between any other portion of the year. So June, July and August are really our most important times. And we do our best to make everything count. And here's what I mean by that. We film as much as we can. Okay, we film as much as we can. And we aim to answer these three questions right here. One, who are our best players? Okay, so you might think it's pretty simple, and yeah, you might know that without filming everything and reviewing all the film. But number one, who are our best players? Number two, who are our next best players? Okay, so we kind of put it into 3 tiers. Number one, who are our best? Number two, who are our next best? And then number three, what about everybody else? Right? What about everybody else? So as we're sitting down during the summer, right, as we move into June and track season is sort of over, spring sports are over, and we're moving into June, which is our summer conditioning and our summer practices, we start filming everything. And at that point, we're counting everything as well. So we know who's going to be there. We know how they're performing in practice. We know how much they're lifting. We know how many times they've made mental errors on plays, and we chart everything. And like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit more in the second video, but it helps us then to evaluate who our best players are, right? Who our best players are. And that leads us to the question, how do we get them the ball, right? How do we get them the ball? So at the end of the day, game planning really comes down to how can we most easily get the ball to our best players. If you're not getting the ball to your best players, you're certainly not going to be very successful. So we'll spend most of our summer trying to figure out what plays fit our best players' skill set the best. What are the best runs and best passes that we have to get our best players the ball? So for instance, we would use a chart like this where we would chart out our players, what position they are. We would talk about what we thought their best run play was, what their best pass play was. And what you'll find is as you're sort of going through this, you can create a cross section of plays that you might want to spend your most time focusing on throughout the summer. So we might sit down after our first couple weeks of conditioning in June and say, wow, we're really doing a great job with the power read play, right? So maybe we want to find a couple other ways to put the power read in the game, right? Whether that be off of motion, whether that be off of a static power read from the backfield. But why are we going to waste our time doing things that our kids aren't good at, right? That our kids aren't good at. The second thing is, how do we put them in a position to be successful? So what formations work best against the teams that we're playing? So when I'm going to scout an opponent, right? When I'm going to scout an opponent, in a perfect world, the opponent would run our exact formation, our exact plays, and I could see exactly how the defense might run fit or cover pass concepts on those. Now, that never happens, right? Even our closest team in our conference isn't going to come out in most of the stuff that we're running, right? And that's okay. But I'm usually looking at a couple specific formations. Okay, I'm usually looking at a couple specific formations. So first of all, other than 2x2 and 3x1 and how they kind of cover those and what their base checks are, I want to know how they're aligning to nub trips. So 3 wide receiver trips with the tight end to the backside, right? Because that formation gives a lot of people a lot of problems because hypothetically you have run strength to either direction and you have a pass strength to one direction. So it's gonna tell me, right? That formation is gonna tell me exactly what side, right? Exactly what side that they're gonna designate the run strength and what side they're going to designate their pass strength. So it's always important for me to look at nub trips. I always like to take a look at wing slot as well, wing slot. So the old, west right slot or red slot in the wing tee. I want to know how they're aligning to that, really for the same reason I want to know how they're aligning to nub trips. Because once again, they're going to tell me which side they're putting their run strength to, if they're setting their team based off of our run strength, or it's going to tell me if they're a field or boundary team, right? So I can learn a lot about a defense based on those two formations and how they set up. Now, I also want to see how they align to any empty sets. Any empty sets are very important to me as well, because I want to know if I could hit quick game out of empty. If I could hit quick game out of empty, I'm going to stay in empty the entire game. So if we're coming out 5 wide and empty right formation, I want to know if they're going to cover me man for man, if they're going to cut people, apex people. I need to know how they're covering us. And then lastly, any special formations that I see on tape, I definitely want to chart. So if I see quads, if I see an interesting formation into the boundary, right? If I see trips into the boundary, does that change their field and boundary rules based on what I've seen earlier, right? Those are all important to me. Usually in the specials column as well, I'll take a look at bunch or condensed formations, right? So bunch really gives people a lot of problem, and usually teams only have 1 or 2 checks to bunch or condensed formations. So at that time, I can almost dictate what they're running. If I know that when we come out in bunch, they're going to run quarter, half to the bunch side and walk their strong side backer out over the top of the bunch, I know how they're going to align. I might actually get them to check out of a blitz or something else that they might have planned. So those are the 4 main formations outside of our base formations, pro, 2x2, and 3x1, that I will take a look at. And then quite simply, I'm going to chart it, right? And I'm going to chart this. So as I'm looking at a team, and say week 1 we're playing, a team up the way, right? I would say, okay, in nub trips, it was 1st and 10 on their own -40. Whoever I'm scouting, they had a 10-yard gain on a railroad concept play, and then I'm going to put, hey, they hit X on a deep sit, right? So that'll tell me that, okay, they might be having trouble with nub trips, and they might be having trouble with the railroad concept. So maybe that's something we want to talk about putting in this week, or pulling out of our playbook. 2nd and 3, 25-yard line. They're on the wing slot. There's a 25-yard gain on sprint smash. They had a hard time covering the slot corner route, right? So I might go in and put that exact play in. I might go wing right slot or west right slot, sprint left smash. And that might be an easy way for you to get your game plan sort of rolling, right? Get your game plan sort of rolling.